edition of HoopsU. That's what we call this little podcast that me and my co-host, colleague from BTN, Rapheal Davis, are doing here as we prep for the season and beyond. And we're pleased to be joined by Matt Painter, the head coach of Purdue, and Rapheal's former head coach, but he's always coaching him. Matt, I have to first off say, Purdue isn't usually known like Northwestern, Syracuse, Missouri, and yet it's become, I think, maybe the sports journalism capital of the world with the amount of people that you've produced.
There you go.
Certainly on our network. What's in the water in West Lafayette that everyone leaves your program that placed you and then wants to be a broadcaster, whether it's Robbie or Rapheal or now Lewis? I could go on.
I think for a lot of people, like they want to stay in the game in some capacity more than anything. Like you have that bug, like you play professionally, then you get done. Like, what am I going to do? Like, a lot of people think like coaching is easy. Sometimes players, they don't quite understand everything that's going on while they're in college and what guys do. Once former players start to figure that out and understand that, then they have a real pause. Because it's not, you do about 20 to 25, 30% of basketball when you coach. Like everything else is, really, looking after your players, making sure everything is lined up for them academically, socially, and making the right decisions and just helping them grow. But to be able to announce games or be in the studio or be in print media, whatever it might be, you're still around the game. You still have, that access to the game and to players and to hang around. So like good for those guys, especially, if you can make a good enough living and you're doing it for like 5 to 6 months. I know some of you guys are around the clock, but when you're just college basketball, like, you're kind of locked in there. And I know Rapheal has about 10 side hustles. So like, that's not definitely him. He's got something going, whether it's his foundation or helping kids or his camps, his clinics. I could go on forever. Christmas camps, Thanksgiving camps, Easter bunny camps. I mean, Ray's got a camp every time you turn around, but like, good for him. Like he's giving back to his community and, doing some real positive things. And obviously Robbie and Coach Weber obviously was an assistant here for, 18 years. And now he's helping out the Big Ten Network and doing a great job. So it's good to watch those guys and listen to what they have to say. They try to stay diplomatic. They try to make sure they're not pro Purdue and they're not being homers. So I respect that as long as they're, still, giving us our love.
Hey, one quick thing before we got to shower him for some praise because he does do wonderful things. I know you're proud when your players are playing in the NBA and things like that, but what kind of pride does it bring you when you see what Rapheal, as an example, does in terms of giving back to Fort Wayne and other people
Right.
as a grown adult with a family and the whole bit?
Right. Well, we just had he just had one of his fundraisers here on campus and our guys were able to attend, our whole staff attend. Conzo Martin spoke, Zach spoke. It's great. It's purposeful and he's making a difference and he's helping kids and just trying to get them on the right track and stay on the right track. And what he's done a great job of is giving them examples, taking them places to see like, hey man, you're not limited. Don't think that you're limited in what you can do in this world. Like you're not limited here. And he's opening up Pandora's box to let them know, hey, they can be an engineer. You can get into business at Purdue. Like you can do so many things with your life. Don't think that you can't through education and through keeping your nose clean and making good decisions. And I think that's what, Chris Herron talks about it a lot, like allow peer pressure to be positive peer pressure. Don't always let peer pressure be a negative. And it's so true. And we've all seen that. You like, hey man, I don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for a couple older dudes that, helped me, kind of see the light and see what's important. And, he's doing that for a lot of young kids in Fort Wayne and not just in Fort Wayne, in this community. I know he was down in Atlanta for a while. So, he's touching a lot of lives.
Coach, you talk about those lessons and Chris Herron and those guys that would come back and speak with us. And then even some of your lessons that went above basketball in a sense of like, I remember one stuck with me. It was like, no one's gonna carry your free throw percentage when you're like 40 or something like that. And it was like little things like that is like stuck with me. But then the question for me is, because I thought that was normal. I thought the support that you would give off the court, I thought even post graduation, the relationship we had, it was every coach had that with every player. You know what I mean? So how important now
Right.
I realize it's not. How important it is for you to really make Purdue in a sense of kind of like not you're just not here to play ball, you're here to grow. And then after school, I got you.
Right.
Because I remember you would call me about Keaton Grant when he was retiring to play overseas and he was coming back home and getting him set up. So like, why does that stuff really matter to you?
Well, I think it starts with somebody doing it for you. You know, I always say I had 1 year experience as the head coach, you know, at Southern Illinois, and I was able to get, you know, this job, you know, right place, right time. I was very, very fortunate. But there were so many more people that were in a better position than I was. I don't know if better position for Purdue, but just in terms of only being in the business for 10, 11 years to get a job like this. And so I'm very grateful for, you know, the people that came before me and all the things that they did for me. I always say, like, you know, think about all the people that helped you get there. Like, just let's take Andy, like all the people that helped him, like, okay, here's a piece of paper and write down all the people that have helped you and been a positive influence. In a short time, you're probably going to come back and need another piece of paper. Like, that's how many people it takes for one person to be successful. So I've always like recruited how I liked getting recruited. And I've always treated people like how I like being treated. And the one thing is don't be afraid to tell people that you care about the truth. And like, sometimes I go a little overboard with that, but I don't care. Like, you know, I wish I was a better player. I wish some things would have happened, you know, a little differently, but that's on me. Like, that's my responsibility. Like, I didn't have the career that I wanted, but that I have no one to blame besides myself. So I look at it like their career is my career. And I'm going to say some things to you that I wish somebody would have said. Now, if you would have said it to me at 20, like I probably would have got salty, you know, because I wasn't mature enough to understand that the person was trying to help me. And so like, that's where I just try to square guys up and let them know. But then afterwards, it's not like I coached you, just like I'm friends with people. Like, we're friends. Like, it's not to me, it's not a big deal. Like, but now you got to be able to say some things and do some things, but you also got to be careful because they're not 20 anymore. Like, you know, you got to be respectful. Like, someone's 30 years old, you can't talk to them, you know, like they missed a line in a suicide. Like, you know what I mean? You got to be respectful and say, hey man, like, here's the deal. You know, here's some traps that it looks like you're going to walk into with these decisions that's up on you. And so like that's all. Like, I don't want someone to have a great basketball career. I want them to have a great life. Obviously, we're going to work on basketball. Obviously, we're going to try to get better. We're going to be honest with you. We're going to be a truth teller. But deep down, like, if you get a scholarship to Purdue, like, you should have a great life. And because there's a lot of people here that want to help you, but we're also not going to enable you. I think that happens a lot, you know, and that's sometimes I'm guilty of that with guys where I do a little bit too much, and now I'm enabling them. Like, I always say that in recruiting, like, you know, you came in here and sat with your mom and dad and we talked, but when you go in and you got a meeting with the Boston Celtics, if you're putting your name in the draft or you're going to work at Eli Lilly, mom and dad are not in that meeting. I'm not in that meeting. You're in that meeting all by yourself. Your agent is not in that meeting. Like, you know, sit up and grow up. Like, it's your time now. But if people have been doing stuff for you all the way, now, like, you're in this position, that's going to come out real quick when you can't articulate your thoughts. It's going to come out real quick that you're not a worker. It's going to come out real quick that you're not for them. Like, you know, Eli Lilly's like an unbelievable organization. The Boston Celtics is an unbelievable organization. Two different lines of work, but they have a lot of the same qualities in terms of what they're asking for in their employees. And so, like, that's something for us. Like, I got to have you ready for that. And maybe part of having you ready for that is you don't like me and how I handle. I really don't care. You want to get down to it. I really don't. Like, I want you to be successful. I got enough friends. Like, we're cool. You'll respect me down the road. I hope I'm still living for you to say something to me, but you'll respect me to be able to say, like, hey man, I appreciate you, like, looking out for me. But some of our most talented guys, like, we had some really, really tough conversations because, like, okay, you're averaging 20, but like where are we going to be when we're 28 years old? Like, where are you going to be if you got to play a different role on a professional team? Like, And that's where I always come up with the world doesn't care if you can make a step back jumper. Like, they really don't care when it gets down
They
to
don't
it.
care. Yeah.
They
And
do
I'm
not
glad you
care.
brought up, because you also don't know how people are going to talk about you when you're not around. And I mean, I'm living proof of that, and I appreciate you and Tom, and others in this business, because like when I got laid off at ESPN, how I treated people in 18 years at ESPN, that mattered when I had to get a new job with the Big Ten Network,
Yes, sir.
NCAA Turner. And if I was an asshole and treated people wrong, then all these people in our space, in our sport, wouldn't have come to bat for me, So
Right.
that all matters, how you treat people. And because you don't know what's going to happen when you're not there. And then they say, oh, should we recommend person X, for this job, and I also, I'm dovetailing a little into this transfer portal issue, because I also think it depends on how I'm a big believer in how you leave a place. And, from everything I can tell from the outside, I don't want to talk about other teams here, but I'll just use this as a very quick example. But like, Paul Mulcahy finished his career, he graduated, did a great job at Rutgers, and he just wanted something new. For whatever reason, he went to Washington. I don't get the sense that Steve's like upset with him because he did everything at Rutgers. They didn't even know if he was going to play another year of college basketball, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But how you leave a place, especially before you graduate, may matter how you're treated after that, how you dealt with all that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think that's lost within the portal is, okay, we got movement now everywhere, but it still matters how you handle that situation.
No question. No question. Like, you're trying to better yourself. And rightfully so. I always talk about, from our standpoint, we're trying to win. Like, we're trying to put a team together and win. And that sometimes gets lost. Well, last time I checked, when it comes to the basketball piece, that's the thing that's the most important. So I always looked on teams like, man, who am I playing with? Like when you go to play a pickup game and you got next, like, you're looking like, who's going to lose? Who can I pick up off the losing team? I just want to win so I can stay on the court. Like, that's it. So like, when guys want to roll and they want certain things individually, you're like, yeah, but you got to mesh with the team. And that's what, like, professionally, if you can't handle a role and role definition, like, you're done. Like, if you're a 3-and-D guy and you can't guard somebody, well, you're not a 3-and-D guy. You're just a 3, because you can't guard anybody. Like, if you can't make good decisions or you're not great with their superstars, well, when you have all this changing, how are you supposed to, put a team together? But if I'm an individual, like, I want to know who's on the team because I want to win. Sure, I want the opportunity to play and play a lot, but I also know that if I'm going on a championship caliber team, there's going to be competition. You can't do it by yourself. So it's always interesting, a lot of the dynamics there. And when you try to explain that to people in a room, like, when you're sitting there, it's not the D1 council because they don't let us talk to the D1 council, but like men's basketball oversight committee, everyone in the room's nodded. Like, yeah, because they all go back to their respective schools and they talk to their coaches and they tell them the stories. They're like, hey man, we're trying to piece a team together, but this is becoming like a pickup game or AAU in terms of when you get into the spring. Like, there's no good news in the spring. Everybody's moving, everybody's doing things. And like, only thing we're trying to do is get some structure so we can piece a championship caliber team together and have a chance to win, because that is the goal from a basketball standpoint.
And coach, I don't know this to be fact, but I'm just guessing. You guys got to have one of the lowest transfer rates in the country. Is that something
Yes.
that you guys? Is that something you take pride in? Is that something throughout the season you're checking to make sure guys are happy? Because I know you, and it's kind of like, is that something that you guys set out to be, or is that just through the program, through the culture,
Right.
that just is what it is?
Yeah, we haven't changed anything in how we've done stuff, even with the portal. So I think, like, the start of your recruiting, like, you have to be honest. And when they ask you questions and you don't know, because you can't predict in 2 years where you're going to be. You're like, hey, this is how we're going to use you. You're like, well, If Kevin Durant walks in that door, I bet you we use you differently. I bet you we do a lot of really good stuff to get Kevin Durant in scoring positions. I think that's what we're going to do. So, like, it's not fair to tell somebody, hey, here's how I'm going to use you, when in reality, it depends on the people that are around you. And I think just being truthful and letting them know, like, if you become one of our top 2 or 3 scorers, like, man, we've proven that. Whether you're Jaden Ivey or Carson Edwards or Zach Edey or Travion Williams, or we can go down the list, right? Doesn't matter what position. Robbie Hummel, Vince Edwards, like, you go right down there, and you've been on those teams, Ray, when you've been like that 3rd or 4th guy for us offensively, and tell them how many things we ran for you. None. Very little. Because you know why? That 3rd to 4th scorer, you don't run things for them. So these guys, like, they lose their minds, and they want these roles. But if I got Biggie on one block and I got Carson Edwards on one wing, and you're the next dude, then you're the next dude. That's just the way that rolls. Well, and so, like, young people and parents, they don't understand all that. And so, like, when you're changing constantly, like, how are you supposed to get a feel for that? That's impossible. Well, we haven't changed as much. So we lose about, I think, 1.2 guys a year. So that's the lowest in the Big Ten. We've taken in 2 recruits in the last 3 years, 2 fifth-year transfers, I should say. And so that's the lowest in the country for a high major. But I think when you go somewhere from an educational standpoint where that degree means something, like, and you treat them right, you know, because guys want pushed. If you got the right guy, they want coached. They want coached hard. They do. They might not like it sometimes, but the guys that really want to get better, and they have aspirations of winning a championship and being a pro, like, they want that. And so I think when you're honest and you treat them like your own, and doesn't mean you're not coaching them hard, and you got a great institution like Purdue, I think we have some built-in advantages. I think because the state of Indiana is such a good basketball state, you know, because our school is such a good academic school, the Big Ten is such a strong conference. You know, who's leaving the Big Ten to go to other conferences? You know, it's still the only conference that I think, maybe one other conference, but no one's leaving. No one's leaving our place and going other places because, you know, we got a great academic situation. We got a great TV situation. Our money's at a high level. Our football's at a high level. Like, you know, just across the board, we've really checked a lot of boxes.
You know, it's funny you just brought that up. I was thinking about, like, in this, and it'll phase out. I think we have 1 or 2 more years of the COVID year, this year, next year, maybe.
Right.
And NIL, to your point, like,
that's correct.
You obviously recruit bigs all the time, and you don't know if Zach Edey's coming back until he's coming back. You know, like, he literally
Correct.
took it down to the last day, and you got to be honest. And if I'm a parent of a younger big, I mean, I might be like, oh, this was going to be my kid's turn, but wait a minute, here's the player of the year. Okay,
right.
So my kid's not better than that kid. You know, he's the player of the year. I have to accept that. And that's what it is. I mean, like, that's reality.
Right. Yeah. See, that really, like, when you look at our front line and the guys that didn't leave our place, and it shows you that they want to win. Like, they know their minutes are cut with him, right? You know, he's grabbing 30 minutes. Even you guys can figure that out, right? You know, Zach Edey's grabbing 30 minutes in the rotation next year. You're like, I think that's going to happen. He's National Player of the Year. So when you look at that and guys still stay, first of all, it jumps out to me about education because they want to get their degree from Purdue, and that matters. The other thing is they like being here, and they like being around their teammates. And that's our job. I always tell recruits that's our job, to get the right people around you. And then when you come here, now I'm selling you, like, hey, man, we got guys that understand. Like, if you're someone on our team and you don't work on your game, man, you're going to get made fun of. Like, you know, people are going to look at you funny. You're like, you got horns coming out of your head. Like, if you're not going to class and you don't take care of your academics, like, you're going to stand out. Like, you're going to stand out. So if you can get guys that love the game, but also understand how important education is in their life, and they have that balance, like, that's the key right there. When everything is, you know, 7 AAU teams, 2 high schools and a prep school, 3 4-year colleges, like, when have you ever hit adversity and fought through it? Like when have you ever done that? Like when has that ever happened? So like, are we really setting up things to help, young people? And they're like, well, they should have the right to do this and do the right this. Yeah, but you're constantly doing what you want to do instead of what's best for you. And that's where maturity hits in as a person. Some people never get there. And it took me a long time to get to that point as a person to realize, hey man, like I love to have fun. And Ray will tell you this. I always talk about making your hard work fun. Like I love it. If we're in the office, we're gonna have fun. For practicing, we're gonna have fun. Now we don't have fun when we lose. All right, there's nothing fun about that. But like that's the point, man. Like, you got to make your hard work fun and you got to really work at things, but you can't always do what you want to do. You got to do what's best for you. And then what happens in life is when you get married, you have kids, and like now my wife and I, we have 5 kids between us. Like, man, I'm in a cool 7th place. I'm so far away from 6th place, it's not even funny. But that's life. Like you should, if you don't enjoy doing things for people, especially your own family, like you have to have enjoyment of helping other people. And sometimes part of helping other people is, saying some tough things, but that's your job as a coach, in my opinion.
Wait a minute, real quick, because we're going to wrap up soon. We talk about the team. We only got a couple minutes, but if you're a 7 seed, who's the 1 seed in your family?
Depends on the day. Normally it's your wife, but like, hey, those kids will leapfrog you now. So we got all of them out of the house. So we're 19 to 29. So it's a little different when, none of them are around on an everyday basis. So, but we got a couple dogs. Now we got a cat. So I might be like lying to you about being 7th place. So
You might be in Dayton. You're in the first 4.
No doubt. I'm just happy to be in. I'm just happy to be involved. Like, you know what I mean?
Being in the field. That's funny, man. Coach, yeah, I like what you said about the portal, though, because one thing I can remember, I don't know if I learned it from you or just learned it through life, but when you jump ship, when you transfer, I mean, especially if you take your problems with you, your problems go with you. You don't just leave your problems at the previous school. And a lot of people don't realize that. You don't just transfer to a new situation, become a whole new person. Like, that's just not the case. And Coach, just because everybody talks about the transfers and everybody talks about the portal, and you talk about the guys that kind of stuck through it, didn't get a lot of minutes and kind of worked their way through it. And you guys have a guy like that now, and Trey Kaufman-Renn. I mean, you see him at practice.
Yeah,
I've seen just kind of a lot of guys aren't talking about him, but kind of what have you seen from him this offseason?
Yeah, he's been big time. He's really put in a lot of time. And I came through the gym on the 4th of July and his birthday, and he was down there working all by himself. Now, I don't know if he knew it was the 4th of July, and I don't know if he knew it was his birthday. Like he's just locked in. Like he's locked in, man. Like he's a basketball junkie, and he's on it, and he puts a lot of time in his game, watches a lot of film, like a lot of our guys do. I love our front court. Like we could go any direction with Mason or Caleb or him. And, obviously Zebo, Will Berg has really improved and getting better last 2 weeks. Like he's been really good, done some good things, and has been fighting Zach, which we got to send them to their corner sometimes in between rounds. But
Got a Canadian and a
I'm
Swede.
excited for him.
Those are 2 peaceful countries. 2 peaceful countries.
There we go. And so, I'm excited for Trey, man. He's very down to earth, very locked into things. He keeps things simple, but he's going to have a big year for us.
Where can because I mean, when people hear Trey, they're going to think. I mean, automatically you think, well, he was there last year. Where will he help you guys in a different way this year?
Well, just playing the 4, like we started it off that way last year. And then from a defensive standpoint, I shifted, and then he really just backed up Zach. So when Zach didn't play a game in non-conference, Trey had 24 last year in the game. I don't know if people realize it, but when you're 22-1, you think like, man, like we got this, we have it exactly where we need to have it. And that just kind of like, no matter what, like your puzzle's never complete, and things are always kind of subtly changing. And like we're getting into the NCAA tournament and we can't score 60 points. And like, here's a guy that can really score the basketball. And we get into those situations because in both those last 2 games, like we've turned the ball over. Like you got to take care of the basketball and give yourself a chance, especially when you're a great offensive rebounding team. But Trey's such a good navigator in that low to high post, scoring, passing, and doing stuff. Now, maybe our matchup isn't ideal, but he's really worked on his defense. But I don't want to take that away from the other guys in there, because Caleb First has been really good, had a lot of energy, played hard. Mason Gillis is one of the all-time workers here. Like, he works so hard. I told him the other day he overtrains. Like, we got to have him, like, that pop and that freshness at the end of the year. But, like, think about that as a coach. You're telling somebody they overtrain. Like, I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, that dude's, he's a tough dude, and he plays hard. He's not scared one bit. Not scared. He's going to come at you, and he's going to keep putting in time. But they've all been good role models for our program in terms of just, the basketball piece of working and laying on the line. And then, because there's going to be times they do nothing wrong and they don't play as much, just because somebody else has got the matchup or somebody else is playing. And now that's where we need their leadership. That's where we need them. It's like the guy that comes out of the game. And I know you heard me say this, but, like, don't come out of the game and say, hey man, like, why'd you take me out? You'd be like, because I put him in. And they just look at me when I say that, like, because they made a rule and only 5 people can play. Like, you don't want to be like a smart ass, but you're like, hey man, don't disrespect the guy that won the game. Like, the guy who subbed in the game, like, I'm not in the business of taking bad basketball players. Like, come on, like, what did I do wrong? You asked a question I told you not to ask, so you wouldn't disrespect one of your teammates, but yet you came over here and asked it anyways. And so, like, what are we doing, man? And, like, I just look at guys when they do crazy shit like that. I'm like, hey man, like, come on, that's your guy. Like, you go and have a pizza with him, you hang out with him. When you come back here to a tailgate in 30 years, like, that's the guy you hang out with. I'll be gone by then. Like, come on. But hilarious. Like, you'll still have a guy or two that are. Yeah, but that's what drives your team. Like, when you have guys that, I always say that no matter what the circumstance is, if we walk in there and we have a win and you're mad, you got that look on your face, like you're messed up. Like, you're messed up. Like, that's your problem. Like, get out of your feelings and get over yourself and go sing the Purdue fight song. Like, hey, we just won a game. Like, what are you mad?
All right, the clock is ticking. We didn't pay for the bigger Zoom. We got 30 seconds. Tell me how the backcourt is better.
They just worked on their game, man. Good players. Braden Smith, Fletcher Laurier. Happy to have Lance Jones. Excited. Ethan Morton in his last year as a senior. Brian Waddell is healthy and stayed here the whole summer and worked on his game. Miles Colvin can shoot it. Athletic. Cam Heide was 4 for 4 from 3 other night in our scrimmage. From 3, very athletic. Those last 4 that I mentioned, like, we need some separation right there. I need some separation. I need to know who the hell to play. But I like all those options. There's not a person I mentioned that I'm not excited about. Like, I have no problem playing anybody that I've mentioned. And, we got a good team. We got a deep team. But, like, we're going to have to, get that figured out. They're going to have to get that figured out. Because, you would think with your scrimmages, your exhibition game, playing Arkansas, getting into, the start of your season, like, we got to be able to get that figured out.